Several of you have asked me to provide a current trailer walkthrough. I was initially resistant to doing so because my goal was to get a house that was simply functional and not necessarily beautiful by traditional standards. Also, it always feels like it's a provisional living space as we are always working on projects, and now we're about to completely demolish the kitchen. Also, if I'm going to show it, then I have to clean it. But I've decided I will show you what we have going on right now so you can get a sense of how we are living with just the necessary utility and structural repairs. It's a perfectly functional home. As you have probably seen if you read the comments, a lot of people post that I could have just thrown away this old trailer and had something brand new without all of these problems. As I was answering that comment with financial explanations over and over again, I finally realized that it actually wasn't just a financial decision for me, but also a very personal one. So I'm going to go over both and how I valued things. But first, an important financial hack, because I only briefly mentioned this in my first video. I want to underscore this point in case you were considering similar options. I ran away from traditional housing because property taxes and insurance were killing me. It was getting to be about $1,000 a month and increasing every year. So my trailer here is on blocks. It is not on a permanent foundation. It is not attached to the land. And that means that my trailer is considered personal property. It's like a boat or an RV. I can move it off the land. So it is not included in my property tax appraisal. So I can turn this old trailer into a very nice house, but it won't ever be taxed like a nice house. That's what keeps my property taxes so low. I average out to about $60 a month, although I pay twice annually. If I had a residential building here, my property taxes would probably go to about $3,600 a year, which is what I know a lot of other people pay. And I didn't want $300 in taxes every month. I like $60 better. Getting a permanent home with a low monthly cost is an important long-term goal for me. I'm the 6th child in a family of 10. My parents grew up with very little and made it into the working class, but all 8 of their children went far beyond that. But in the last 10 years, things changed so quickly. Some of our very successful siblings started getting sick quite young, sometimes really sick, with dementia or other permanent disabilities. As one of the youngest, seeing how quickly things can change for all of us encourages me to keep things very simple. But I also realized that my decision to keep the old trailer wasn't just a financial calculation. I realized that I didn't want to get rid of it. I didn't want to dispose of it simply because it was old. I didn't want to throw it away simply because it was broken and needed a lot of work. Yes, it had a lot of problems, but it was also a time capsule, and something about that felt valuable. I didn't want a new mobile home. I wanted to spend the time required to repair this one. We learned to be patient with what was broken. There was so much here that had been left behind, and it was a story I needed to slowly excavate and restore. I understand that not everyone has that feeling. I called one plumbing company and asked them if they could come help me, and they replied, "No, we don't have bulldozers." So I get that most people see a pile of junk. But I also remember an old guy in my father's rural farm community saying to me, "Out here, you determine the wealth of a man by the size of his junk pile." I hated my father's junk piles. I thought he was a hoarder with too many old cars in the yard, from his 1970s Lincoln all the way back to my great-grandfather's farm truck. But then, when I had to live out there to take care of my mom, I started to understand the value of those piles of junk in the woods. Because when you're living in a very remote part of the world, hours from a big store, you very frequently have to come up with creative solutions to your problems. You use what you already have and you make it work. Having piles of old equipment and vehicles gives you a lot of junk to start with. These old homesteaders could fix anything with anything. My family's ancestral farm burned down in the 1970s when my grandfather was burning trash. He lost control of the fire and everything burned to the ground. The old farmhouse and the old barn that had already been there for 100 years were gone. The old blacksmith shop is the only building that survived the fire. In here, they made and repaired everything themselves, using the junk they had in the woods. When I was caring for my mother out here, I needed to make a pen for my animals. My son and I built a door, but we needed a door handle, so I started digging through my father's piles of rusted junk. I found something that I thought would work as a makeshift door pull. My father wanted to know what I found, so I showed it to him. He then said, "You know what that is? It's for turning the ashes of an old wood stove. It was in the farmhouse that burned. I pulled it out of the debris after the fire." This rusted piece of junk was suddenly beautiful to me. I loved it so much more than a new door pull I could buy at Lowe's. At that time of caring for my mom, I was living in a ramshackle farmhouse next to my family homestead. This was Sylvia's house, an old tar paper home the previous owners had built themselves. She raised 6 kids here. It still had her old wood cook stove that she used to make homemade bread until she died at age 98. She lived until 2014, but never wanted a new stove. So now I'm living here, but the old farmhouse only had a shower, and I really wanted a bathtub to soak in and relax, but it was $1,000 to get one. So then my father said to me that there were 2 bathtubs in the trash pile in the woods that I should go take a look at. I wandered through the woods and the trash until I found them. My brother used a tractor to pull a cast iron tub out of the woods. It was stamped 1931 underneath. We dragged it to my house and plumbed it. It cleaned up beautifully. It was huge and heavy and felt so much more luxurious than the plastic ones for sale. I imagined the women almost 100 years ago soaking in this same tub. This junk was becoming so beautiful to me. When I lived in the city, I tried to stay disciplined in sorting my recycling into bins and dragging them to the curb each week. But I realized these old homesteading families with their piles of junk in the woods have been doing a better job of recycling old materials than me for longer than anyone can remember. So now I am going to show you my junky trailer. It's not necessarily beautiful, but you already know how much I love it. So that is a tour of our trailer as we're living in it right now. I know that some of you have said I should write a book, and I wanted to address this because I did. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. My book has more to do with my professional work. It's not about living in a trailer. I research and write about the psychological and spiritual development of older women. I wrote it during the journey with my mom, but it's not really a topic that's for everybody. It is a topic I love. If you want a copy and you can't buy it, just send me an email. It's also in the description, and I can buy you the Kindle version. It was important to me to repair and restore this old trailer, but now I want to make it less of a time capsule from the 1970s and more of my own. I'm selling our house in Texas that I had rented out, so that will allow me to make this our home. Your comments mean so much to me, but I also hope that these videos are encouraging you to be open to the material change and spiritual growth that our hardest challenges can bring. I notice that I will sometimes receive compliments about my ability to do this remodel, and I realized that my descriptions after the fact may make it appear as if I knew what I was doing. I did not. Things did not work, and I would call people for help in complete confusion. Things were explained to me, and as they were repaired, and those are the explanations that I then provided in my videos. I had no idea how anything worked. Other people who knew more than me helped me. I also hope that you notice that most of what is beautiful in my life now was not actually chosen by me, but these were instead unexpected gifts that often came from the junk I did not ask for or even want, but eventually became something precious and beautiful. So I am grateful that the plans and ambitions I had for myself failed, but I will save those stories for a later video. I'll just say for now that I'm so grateful for my failures as well as the unearned blessings I received instead.